know that for the past 6 months, I've been doing research on the thoughts and works of two of these old white dead men, who are Milton and Molière. And not only did I put myself into this situation willingly, but I also enjoyed it. A lot. Because both of these guys were practically insane, and their works are a product of that insanity, that chaos. And not to mention their lives, because those were all the more insane. I remember I was reading John Milton's biography, and for such a long time I thought that this was the biography of some random fictional character called John Milton, because the things that happened in his life were so surreal to me. This guy was fluent in Greek, Latin, and English by the age of 12 as a requirement to get to high school and middle school, and the only things he needed for his school supplies were just a bunch of pencils and 2 wax candles. That's it. So I had to go back and check the publisher and the authors like 5 times because it just made no sense to me. Anyways, I read these biographies and these poems and the plays of these authors, and they were absolutely insane in terms of everything. Character, thought, plot, descriptions. And because I enjoyed these so much, and because the authors were practically insane while writing them, I started wondering, am I insane? Not insane like a mental issue, but insane because of the chaos where everything is everywhere and thoughts know no boundaries. And I reached the conclusion that I probably am insane in that sense. And so are all the classic authors I like so much, and literature is just a means to express and understand that insanity better. So let's talk a little about the insanity of the 2 guys I researched. The thing with Milton is, besides having the life of a fictional character, this guy pretty much had a death wish. And that's what makes him so crazy. Anything people did to stay alive back in the day, he did the exact opposite of. He had many companions, British philosophers, poets, and authors, and you can split these guys into 3 groups. There are the ones that traveled to Europe, the ones that wrote works satirizing the government, and then the 3rd group, which is very similar to the 2nd group, but they wrote works satirizing the religion instead of the government. Now here's what happened. Those who traveled to Europe, specifically Italy, got assassinated. Now, as a person in their right mind, you would think, oh, my friend got murdered. I should definitely stay away from traveling, right? No. Milton had other ideas. Milton thought, oh, my friend got murdered. Well, that actually sounds pretty interesting. I want to do that. And he traveled to Italy. He stayed there for a good month, and he lived. So good job, Milton, you stayed alive. But that was not all. Because then he saw his companions that satirized the government and the religion getting executed by the country because they were attacking the principles of Britain. And he thought it would be the most genius idea of his entire life to write a work that did both. So he wrote Paradise Lost, a work that criticizes the British government, the religion, specifically the Bible, and his relationships and blindness, because keep in mind, this guy was blind while he was writing this entire book, and he lived. And then you have Molière all the way over in the French corner, and not only was he insane and had a death wish like Milton, but this guy was also really creepy. He wrote works practically attacking the French aristocracy, royalty, and gender norms. He was threatened by the king to be executed for performing one of his plays. He performed it nonetheless, but that's not the creepy part. The reason this man is so creepy is because he broke up with his lover at the age of 40. And out of all of the things he could possibly do, he married his now ex-lover's daughter. So not only is there a 20-year age gap between the two, but that whole marriage, one, it meant that he married his stepdaughter. Two, it makes his ex-lover his mother-in-law. So, good job, Molière. You certainly scored a Sweet Home Alabama on that one. And I'm very happy I put that disturbing thought into your head. Anyways, then she cheats on him because he's old and she can't relate to him well enough. So he gets mad because she cheated. But he also knows that it was her right to cheat because she was technically forced into the marriage. Well, not exactly forced in the sense of a forced marriage, when you're a woman in a society that does not believe in the reasons for your existence, you have to resort to more undesirable means to simply survive. But then he wrote a play called The School for Wives. And that work is the main reason for his insanity, because it is a play of existential crisis and self-criticism. Because there he questions why he hates his wife for cheating on him, but then he questions himself. He questions the things he did, why he married his wife, why she cheated, his own reaction to her cheating, and he calls himself an idiot as the main character in the play. He realizes how he took away the freedom of someone so young and so pure, now she practically had no choice. And that is something you will barely see in neoclassical literature, because he depicts the male ego, the male superiority that everyone adored so much, shattering into pieces. And that's insane, because he does that and he presents it to his audience without a single care for the reaction he will get. So maybe, just maybe, it was not a death wish. Maybe it was the Hemingwayesque idea that you will never write well if you fear dying, because then you're hiding the truth from yourself and your audience. And the entire purpose of literature is to remind humanity that it is okay to be human. Because here's what happens. Throughout your life, you have all of these ideas you're suppressing somewhere because they're not accepted by society, or so you think. But at one point, those ideas bottle up, and just like anger, you feel a need to let go. You reach a point where you gradually start not caring. It begins with a simple, but what if this happens? What if I said this kind of question? And as those questions build up, the wonderful process of this sort of intellectual insanity begins. Because you question your ideas, you question how you got them and possible reactions to them and why. And the more you ask, the more you confuse yourself about the reality, to the point where your mind no longer sees that aspect of reality to be real, and reality fades. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful because in that split second where the reality begins to fade, and insanity presents the many opportunities and paths that had been hidden from you, that you had hidden from yourself, you realize exactly how much you had constricted yourself from achieving your true greatness, simply because you thought it was not the common societal way to think or to act. And maybe you fear you won't be accepted by society for saying the things you said, but here's what you didn't think. You are not the first to question these societal ideals, to get bored of the way we live life, and you certainly won't be the last. When others start getting bored and begin their own process of intellectual insanity, they will look towards your writings, your sayings, your words, and they will draw guidance from you, and you will be their escape from what constricts them so much. Now let me tell you something else. You will rarely see this insanity in modern literature, in young adult literature, because those books were not written for you to achieve a greater insight. They were written to take up your time by sucking you into a world that is far more desirable and far more different than your own. And it is okay to like those books. But don't you dare think for a second that just because you read in general, you don't have to read classics. I know for a fact that back when the college side was giving out free classics, many students got them because they looked pretty. Perhaps you're sitting in the audience now, and I don't blame you. I mean, look at them. Gold details, gold edges, hardcover, beautiful illustrations. They're wonderful. But if you opened it and read the first 3 sentences, you will notice that all of those details in the appearance of the book were made to complement the beauty of the words that reside inside. So my challenge to you is to read a classic. And I'm not telling you to go start a classic and finish it in a week. Don't ever do that to yourself. That's intellectual suicide, especially if you're not familiar with classics. Because then you won't understand anything. And you will turn something that is meant to be so chaotic and so beautiful and so honest into self-inflicted torture, and you'll hate it. Start with an easy classic, like Wind in the Willows or Alice in Wonderland. Go at your own pace, read 3 sentences a day, have a dictionary with you, and be honest with yourself. There's no shame in not knowing some words. The language of these books is one from 100 years ago. There is no way you will know the meaning of everything you'll see, and that is quite all right. And as you read, question. Question why this character died and why the other one lived, why the main character is so stuck in one mindset while everyone else around it seems to evolve and change constantly, or how the death of one character affects the development of the other. Question everything and question yourself, and thrive in that insanity, in that intellectual growth, and be proud of yourself for taking that step. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.